But then I'm going to talk a little bit about, more generally, IBM's perspectives about how do we connect these kinds of things and how do we make our work here tonight and over the course of the next few weeks, months, and years a little bit more relevant in the marketplace. So let me start first by talking about disruptive forces. And I think all of you are feeling what some people have called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Many of people have said it's the dawn of a new era in terms of how we actually connect communities and develop technologies and all those kinds of strange and wonderful things. But there's some very good reasons why it's an important time to really embrace that. And the first is that we need it. I would tell you that Canada, and I know that there are others across the globe who are listening to this, Canada needs better outcomes for our communities, for our societies, for our businesses. And frankly, for too long, Canada and other developing countries have been going the wrong way. To give you a little bit of perspective, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Canada was second in the world in terms of its R&D investment in higher education. Skip ahead to just last year and we're sitting at 7th. So we've dropped in terms of our capacity to actually deliver skills and training and the kinds of important transformation that we need. If you take a look at government funding for R&D, we've dropped again from 4th to 9th. But most importantly, at least in my mind, business spending, industry spending on research and development in a Canadian context has dropped from 12th in the world of the 34 countries under the OECD, has dropped from 12th back in 2008, we're now sitting at 22nd. So we've been heading the wrong way. And one of the main reasons for that is that we're not actually connecting people with bright ideas and need and want and the urgency to act on these kinds of things. So one of the biggest forces that I think, and something that you should consider as you look at ideas, is how do we connect your ideas to the motivations, the need, the want, the desire that government has, that our communities have, and that other industry has as well. So force number one is really that demand and that need that we have out there. Secondly is technology advancements. I refer to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, but it's characterized by a blurring of lines, if you will, a blurring of technology lines from pure science lines, things like biology and physical activity, but also about social lines. How do we actually look at sectors and those elements? And so while you'll hear things like cloud computing and artificial intelligence, quantum perhaps, blockchain, those are certainly areas of importance as this emerging technology disrupts our communities, disrupts our businesses and our capabilities. But there's more than that. I'd actually tell you that there's 9, and I've made a list for myself here, of the things that you ought to consider when you look at your opportunities in building new businesses. Certainly cloud computing and artificial intelligence are 2 of those, and I would add blockchain, but it's broader than blockchain. It's around collaboration capabilities and collaboration systems as well. But think about mobile devices, the Internet of Things, modern system infrastructures, security, privacy, and data, big data as an example. Those are the kinds that are proliferating everything that we do, from how we actually speak to each other, from how we actually work with each other, to how do we actually employ people, how do we connect people and communicate people. All of those kinds of emerging technologies are incredibly, incredibly important as we think about this change and this dawn. Thirdly, the onset of data. And I know you're probably all sick of hearing about this. It's what we do every day and what I do mostly every day, is really think about how do we actually better the unbelievable wealth and volume of data that's coming at us. We're talking about today 1 trillion connected devices. If I'm wrong with that, Walter, let me know. And that's getting more and more. We're talking about 25 gigabytes of data coming from every single device on a daily basis, as an example. And so this is going to get worse and worse and worse. Not only to manage, but the most important part is how do we gain insight from big data? How do we actually get those learnings, those ideas, those wants coming from that as well? So that's where largely our investments are. That's why IBM's placed its headquarters here and acquired Cognos as an example, when we went around and actually acquired more than 30 big data and analytics companies across the globe, notably this one here. So when we talk about those kinds of implications, or those kinds of forces that are disrupting, technology disruptions, societal disruptions, the kinds of data disruptions that we're having, what does that mean to us? And the first thing I would tell you is that we're at a point in time where no longer can we keep pace with the amount of change that's coming at us. Our human capacity has been outstripped by the technology capacity that is coming at us. And so we have to get a handle on that and understand what things are important, how do we engage, how do we appropriately communicate, leverage those kinds of things that are there. Secondly, not only is the rate of change coming at us staggering, there are societal consequences for that change as well. And I think that's a lot of what, frankly, this, in particular, legal hackathon session is starting to address, those kinds of things. With the onset of AI and connected devices and IoT and blockchain and all those kinds of things, our view is that income levels will rise, but it will also start to segregate and create different levels of employment standards, as an example, things that we've got to think about. New markets will open, but social tensions may be created as a result of those kinds of things. And certainly one of the important issues that you're addressing here is access. Access to kinds of capabilities and societal challenges and justice that comes from that. Cost of trade may go down, actually, but again, that will actually affect businesses in a very material way, with some of them forced to change. Supply chains will actually change, as an example, but that may lead to rising socio and geological volatility, as an example, that is out there. So there's a lot of societal impacts that come from those kinds of forces that I've talked about previously. The third major implication for me is about economic changes. It's about jobs. It's about what people do. And if you just look at some of the data that is out there, it suggests that over the course of the next 3 years, not 5, not 10, but 3 years, we're going to see something like 6 million jobs disappear. Traditionally, office, administrative, manufacturing jobs literally disappear. Now, those jobs will be replaced by new jobs that are focused on business and operations, on mathematical capabilities, on computer capabilities and technology capabilities. But think about 6 million jobs changing over the course of the next 3 years in North America, and how do we keep pace with the kinds of capabilities and products and services and vehicles to be able to actually support that change that's coming at us. So very, very significant economic implications as well. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about skill. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits from having a hackathon like this, is really trying to broaden and widen the view of the necessary skills in the marketplace because of those kinds of things that I've just been talking about. I think yesterday you talked about privacy a little bit, and the view of privacy by design and open standards and what that means, and that certainly has an implication here. But think about immigration, think about regulatory, think about policy issues as a result of changing capabilities, advanced technologies, societal implications that come from that as well. So at the root of all this, if you think about those forces coming at us and the implications, the very large and significant implications that are resulting from that, we know that we're going to have an evolving labor market. We know that there's a mistrust, if you will, of institutions and governance and change as part of that. The communications and communities need to actually be addressed because they have a risk of being disconnected as part of it. But really that rate of change, that pace is really daunting for us. So I know that over the course of the last days, you've talked about some of those technology perspectives, so let me talk a little bit more very, very generally, and I don't want to get too deep about some of those things that we think is important. And the first I would talk about is what you might call artificial intelligence. We'd like to think about it as augmented intelligence or assisted intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence, because I don't think that serves us all well to talk about it from a replacing standpoint, but how do we actually engage with that? How do we make it help us? It's not the rise of the machines, if you will. It's about how do we actually do better, get better, and learn more. And so, what I would tell you about artificial intelligence is that it offers us a huge opportunity to engage, to grow, to build. And that's because, first and foremost, it has the capacity that we don't, to sift through reams and reams, droves of data, quickly, efficiently, and with context that we as humans just simply don't have. And so rather than looking at it as a worry, look at it as an opportunity. It has the ability to both static and real-time images in a very significant way with unprecedented accuracy, using it for things like breast cancer detection as an example, or security issues in airports, or societal engagement. Moreover, it has the ability to analyze speech. Speech the way we actually speak, not the way we actually type or would like to actually talk, but the way that we actually naturally speak every day. So natural language processing is a very big piece of that. The ability to actually do it and to do it fast in a high-performance computing environment, to change the notion of how we get to insight quicker. So I would tell you first and foremost that artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, assistive intelligence is something that really grows our capacity to deliver in a meaningful way. At IBM, we to think about that as cognitive capability, not necessarily artificial intelligence. And if you think about cognitive capability and artificial intelligence, you probably, from our perspective, think about Watson. I know some of you have been using Watson, kind of a light version of Watson here to do some of the work that you've been doing. But I would tell you it's more than machine learning. It's even more than natural language processing. And not just ours, but the other capabilities that are out there in the marketplace are really looking at machine learning, natural language processing, question and answering capability, looking at high performance computing as an integrated element of that, looking at knowledge transfer and skill development as a function of that. But really what artificial intelligence does for you is really looks at improving your ability to make frontline decisions in real time and in real context with the kinds of digital services layered onto it that you can actually start delivering a product and a service. That's really what you want from an AI capability, is not only to be able to get that insight and to get it in real time and real context, but to actually take your products and your services and stage them in a way that actually launch you in a market in a much more quick and a much more effective way. AI. Second one that I think is incredibly important is cloud. Cloud, I know you spent a bunch of time on cloud yesterday, and I suspect that just about every single one of you, and certainly the groups that will be presenting to this panel of what seems like some sort of singing competition here. I'm not going to sing. I know you all have a familiarity and a comfort with cloud. I would tell you, however, that cloud is not one thing. It's not even the same thing to everybody. Cloud for us, when we talk about cloud, we talk about it in a very open way. For us to kind of take advantage of those forces and those implications that we talked about earlier, we believe in open standards, in developing a cloud system openly by design, from the beginning, inclusive of everybody's capability, making sure that we can attach and connect everybody's capability as well. From public clouds to private clouds and hybrid clouds, we need to have that breadth and depth of capability to kind of support the new capabilities that we need that are out there. And we don't need cloud only to store, which is how people think about it, but we need to think about cloud in a way that allows us to better build, to better manage, and to better essentially launch applications into the marketplace. So think about cloud in a broader way, and I think it'll lead you to make some decisions about your businesses and about your ideas that look at APIs and business services, and how do you make sure that those are launched in a cloud environment? How do you make sure that you can flexibly deploy? You're going to have 15 different clients, legal customers, you're going to have ministries and departments, all of whom need something a little bit different. And so you have to be able to very flexibly launch those kinds of things. But you've got to build in those kinds of capabilities that we talked about earlier. Analytics, IoT capabilities, mobile capabilities, connectivity capabilities as well. Last one that I think is really, really important, and you've spent some time on it, is blockchain. Traditionally, the way to manage a business is to manage your assets. When you start to connect with customers and you connect with clients and you connect with influencers, you're thinking about the transference of assets. How do I give them what they need? How do they give me what I need? That may be cash sometimes, but it may be services or otherwise. And so for us, when we think about blockchain. It's about how do we transfer assets, how do we do so, but in a way that actually builds value. The traditional context was pretty easy, right? It was ledger-driven, where somebody actually notes down everything, passes that ledger along, and something gets added or deleted. And there's very strong governance and compliance associated with those kinds of ledgers that are there. If you think about those driving forces and implications that I talked about earlier, that's no longer possible. When you talk about the collaborations that are going to happen across the world, across parties, across ecosystems, economies, collaboration, connectivity, speed, the Internet of Things, mobile devices, make a traditional view of asset management and of tracking and tracing almost impossible. It certainly makes it inefficient, makes it highly expensive, and it makes it highly vulnerable, frankly, from a security and a privacy perspective. So instead, what you're seeing through the Hyperledger efforts, the foundation, the Linux Foundation, and what you see emerging from all of those players is a shared, replicated, permissioned ledger model, which is the blockchain, where it allows all of the parties to drive consensus, to drive provenance, to drive immutability, and to drive finality to it. That's what the blockchain is for us, is a way to actually get that piece in. At the root of it, though, it's about trust, I would tell you. And so I think what you're seeing from the parties that are working around the open standards on blockchain, be it the Hyperledger Foundation or otherwise, what you're seeing is really an addressing of trust, to look at shared ledgers, smarter contracting and papering, privacy, and also proof to make sure that there's a traceability, a compliance, and a trust that is implicit as part of that capability. And so as you think about blockchain and your services that you're delivering here to this legal context, think about those four elements. Are you actually addressing all four of those? Because if you're not, you're probably not going to poise yourself for success as part of that. So cloud, artificial intelligence, blockchain, there's many, many others that are there. It's tough. Things are running at us in a very fast way. Data is overwhelming us. And I think what we need to do as teams is to work together more, to actually identify paths to bring clarity to that by focusing on the capabilities of some of those things. I would tell you that with all of those pushes and promises, challenges, is an opportunity for all of us, and especially here in an Ottawa context, and I'm sure in a global context as well, to start to address some of those challenges and opportunities and to, frankly, drive economic gain, societal engagement, and benefit for our communities as part of that. Let me turn quickly to IBM's approach on this. And so we've talked about the forces, the implications, and the technologies. Our perspective is the way to address this is exactly what's being done here tonight and across the world in these hackathons. And that is to bring together parties and collaborate. Traditionally, we have far too long run in our stovepipes, done what we did, passed it off to the next person and the next person and the next person. But what we really need to do is to bring parties together to make sure that government, make sure that communities, make sure that industry, small and large, entrepreneurial and industrial in its context, focus on bringing those elements together. We have very often, and I talked about the R&D investments the government had made, that industry is making in Canada as an example. We've taken a very traditional approach to innovation. Intellectual property, skills, funding were very, very tight and very, very structured. And we didn't necessarily connect those to the good work that's being done here at Invest Ottawa as an example, to the startup community, to the incubation portion, or to the scale part that Michael talked about as well. And so we think the answer to that is what I call demand-based innovation, which is to connect those large players, those enterprise needs, to the innovative ideas that all of you bring forward. It's to bring their want, their desire, their investment, their pain, and to connect it to your ideas, your capabilities, and your ability to actually drive change. By bringing those pieces together, that's how we see it. We believe will grow the economy and grow our capability. And so we've invested a very significant amount of time
in building vehicles across the country that allow us to do that. I talked about Invest Ottawa and IBM working together on a program called the IBM Incubator Initiative, which is exactly about that. It's about 4 streams of capability: access to disruptive technologies, support for customer demonstrations or demand-based innovation, an ability to provide you with bespoke business services and consulting that the great folks here can actually deliver, and then ultimately to make sure that we have the appropriate investments that come with that in the form of an ability to get you to export markets and global economies. So we've launched programs like what we call the I3 program here at Invest Ottawa and with the province of Ontario. It's a $54 million program just in Ontario to actually support 500 startups to do exactly that. We've also launched programs like SOCIT. If you've never heard of SOCIT, it's a partnership with 15 universities and colleges to provide high-performance computing and innovative computing platforms to startups, large industry, and academics to work in collaboration on key projects. Those are the kinds of initiatives, and that's the kind of philosophy that we have to address this innovation challenge that we have every day and growing. So there's lots of good examples of legal and social services being developed as part of those ecosystems. Again, I would just say, embrace what's coming at you. It's big, it's daunting, it's fast, but there are tools and capabilities and notably people out there to help. And so embrace open standards, embrace working collaboratively. These kinds of sessions, hackathons, are incredibly important, in my opinion, to drive that spirit of collaboration, but also to drive the capability and the skills necessary to access the tools, the technologies, and the people to help you on that path. We're thrilled as punch to be part of this and to sponsor this. It's something we strongly believe in. Selfishly, I will tell you that we believe that when we help our communities, when we help our companies, when we help our citizens actually grow and change, that helps us build markets and build capability that frankly are better aligned to our own businesses. So we do so because we think it's good, we think it's right, but we also think that there's really strong economic benefit and reason to do it as well, and that's what we want, actually, in everything that we do. So with that, I'll turn it back to Colin, and thank you all for your time tonight, and thank you all for a great weekend of working really hard. I know these things aren't easy. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Pardon my voice. It's been a long weekend. So I'm going to ask Greg Marlin to come get his stuff set up, and I'm going to take the opportunity right now to do 2 things. 1, to officially welcome our judges and do some introductions, and 2, to give our judges a sense of what you've been going through all weekend. So judges, put yourself in this mindset. You show up in a hall like this, perhaps this very hall, on a Friday night. You're fed some snacks, coffee, and you're encouraged to listen, share your ideas, share your thoughts on law, and then find strangers in the room to build a project, to commit to 48 hours of taking that idea with people you haven't met before and turning it into something very real. And you've seen the judging rubrics, and to be able to present to you not only what they've created, but how it would fit into something like this. This is what the teams have been through. It's been absolutely incredible. Warren alluded to it earlier about the extent of collaboration that we saw. So you're in for a real treat. And to the audience in the room and watching remotely, you're in for a treat too, because we have the benefit of a fantastic panel of judges. When we set out to host the hackathon in Ottawa, we said, well, what is Ottawa? Ottawa is a thriving tech center, as we heard from Alan. It's a place where a lot of collaboration can happen and should happen. And a lot of that is happening here at Bayview Yards through Invest Ottawa. So we said, well, we need CEO of Invest Ottawa, Michael Tremblay, on our judging panel. And we said, this is the seat of the federal government. This is where Justice Canada is present. We'd love to get somebody from Justice Canada on. So we have the benefit of Director General Richard Cardiff, Legal Process Center from Justice Canada, on our judging panel. This is also a place where law is regulated. Law is regulated, the practice of law, rather, is regulated provincially, but there's a coordinating umbrella group called the Federation of Law Societies that's present here in Ottawa. And we have Frederica Wilson, Deputy CEO and Executive Director of Policy and Public Affairs with the Federation of Law Societies of Canada on our judging panel. So we're very grateful. Now, of course, lawyers are also educated in Ottawa, the largest law school, the bilingual law school, with a multiplicity of programs is here. And we're honored to have Dean Adam Dodek on our judging panel. Finally, what am I missing? Lawyers. Actually, we're missing a couple things. Missing lawyers. So the Canadian Bar Association is the voice of the Canadian legal profession. And about 5 years ago, they started something called the Futures Committee. And it's actually, among other things, been a fantastic vehicle for driving the legal profession, if not into the future, at least into facing the future, becoming aware of its existence. So we're honored to have Martine Boucher, the current national chair of the CBA Futures Committee, on our judging panel. Martine is also one of those lawyers living the future, and a CEO of Simplex Legal. Now, finally, Ottawa is an entrepreneurial city. We used to call ourselves Silicon Valley North. There's a lot that's been going on in Ottawa for the tech sector for a long, long time. And so we're very pleased to have, representing legal, the tech sector, and so much more about what happens in Ottawa all in one person, with Peter Becky, CEO of Venturing Hills Corporation, on our judging panel. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter of the evening. Now, judges, you have a very complicated rubric in front of you. You've figured out how you're going to deal with it. I'm going to exert no further influence on you on that. But what we're going to do with our teams as they come up, because they are subject to a strict limit of 5 minutes, we're going to give them an opportunity in advance to introduce themselves. And then we'll start the 5-minute countdown.
Hi there. So my solution is for self-representing litigants. And being a self-represented litigant is something I've experienced with, and I can tell you it's going from a very scary place to wanting to be somewhere with confidence. And what gets you to that place of confidence is knowledge and understanding of the law. And it takes you a while to get there. So I'm wanting to build an app that takes the next person coming down the line much quicker to that place of confidence. So one of the first things that can give you confidence is understanding the legal lingo that describes your common language problem. Once you understand that, that opens up what act is involved with your particular situation, and what are some of the remedies, for instance, for that. So the interface I chose was actually email. So I built a conversational interface, and I got it to the point where there is the email interface. So I'll demonstrate in a second. You can send an email and it will return a response. And then I built the sort of proof of concept chat bot that would underpin that. And I still need to connect those two. So I'm going to demonstrate the email and the chat bot. Now, in terms of a business model, I don't want to charge self-representing litigants because they're already, they're self-representing for a reason. And so the business model that I'm choosing is to build a token and have outside people fund that token. So they'll buy a token just like a blockchain token, and then the mechanism will be something I call a proof of utility. So as the app gets used, it will sort of, that'll be a contract that'll get fired up as that transaction happens. And I'm working on a bit of what I call sort of a scale of difficulty. How hard was this answer? And I looked at, there's a sort of a standard of curriculum for measuring how hard courses are. And so that's sort of the first framework that I'll test. And based on the difficulty, it determines the number of tokens that would come out of a random person's wallet who had bought those tokens. So one of the things you'll see is embedded in the email conversation for every transaction is the person who actually donated that token. They could choose to be anonymous, or they could be recognized. And then finally, as that transaction happens, it will fire off to the token owner who donated that token to show them, hey, this is where your money went. So that's sort of the concept, and I'll show you what we've got so far. So the domain is selfrept.com. You can actually type in anything you want here, but I'll do Oracle at qa.selfrep.com, and I'll say, I have a question, okay, about something, right? So I have a question, a legal question. So when I then hit send, might take a second, I should have done this at the beginning. There it is. So here, you see, it's already responded, and it said, "Hi Eddie, thank you for your question regarding, I have a question about something. I'm still learning how to do this on email. Try me out here." As you see, this help brought to you by the generous support of Invest Ottawa. And when the email's ready, then I would be responding by email, and we would be having a conversation that way. But in the meantime, it's set up as a Facebook chatbot app. So now I can, okay. Oh, wait a second. There it is. Okay, so let me start this from the beginning. So I say, "Hi there. Hi there, my name is Oracle. Describe your issue in your own words." Now, we all know the Facebook movie, I hope. There's the Eduardo Saverin, and he gets liquidated out of his shares. Well, I'm using Eddie Savoir, and Eddie doesn't quite have a lawyer the way that Eduardo did. So he says, "My issue is that my co-founders at Facebook have diluted me, okay, and enriched them." Okay, I'll just hurry up. So, let's see. 5 seconds left? Well, okay. Well, I can't demonstrate the chat button. Really, 5 minutes? Okay, so I'll have to demonstrate it another time. But the point is, it would take you through a conversation and digress the problem, and then Sure. So yeah, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. Typically, I start SaaS companies. I've done this with no profit motive, so it's kind of fun to do it just sort of out of the purity of helping humanity. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so my question to you is just for a little clarity about your audience, your users are self-reps, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in developing the concept, I know you said you were self-represented yourself. Did you engage with any other self-reps to talk about the utility of the app?
Not yet, no.
You know, you mentioned the concept of token and that people would be basically kind of providing. Who would be these people in your mind? Who would be the pay?
Oh, I forgot to mention, it sends out an email. Jocelyn, did you get the email?
I did get the email.
So she got the email that said, gave her a transaction receipt. So the people would be people that, want to help. They want to help this kind of a situation. And when I talk to people, there's a pretty responsive thing. Or I think that things like GoFundMe and that kind of thing have proven that people want to get involved with that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I think I understood as you were going through it, there's the two ends of it. One is those that would self-represent. Were there specific areas of that you were looking at? And on the other end of it is a crowdsourcing model. Are there specific targets that you're looking at both ends? I think focus matters here, so I just wondered what your thoughts were on those two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, so I actually think there's kind of legs of this model where you've got a problem where the users don't want to or shouldn't pay, and someone wants to fund the users getting it. So I think this token kind of concept could have legs. beyond this particular problem space. That's really just where I came at it, sort of from, and then, you know, part of it is just the interest in using it. I did do quite a bit of study of the token as trying to roll it out, and it's an interesting problem because there's no real need here for a decentralized database ledger, so you go at a different approach than typical blockchains. Yeah.
Very good presentation. How would you feed the chat box? Where will you get the information to provide to the users? And are you worried about being infringing with law societies by being accused of providing legal advice?
Yeah, I think there's obviously there's a fine line. Where I start at the ontology level, so there's a KILF core, which was done by the Estrella organization in Europe. They built a whole ontology for the legal profession, so I sort of start there. And I didn't really have time to go much further, but you can break down into roles and actors and legal action and all that. And what I would then try and do is create classifications of the legal lingo with sort of keys, and then have the classifiers for the common language, which is actually provided by the sort of bot software, and connect those two. But I think I could do a lot better with a lot more legal people being involved. And then the other problem is where I want to take it is the connection to case law. So here's your problem, okay, here's the top 10 cases in a tree, here's the underlying case that started it all that everyone else quotes, and here's the latest and greatest. Yeah, that's how I do it.
Certainly, access to a lawyer is difficult for a lot of people, and it's getting more difficult. So I think the area you chose is really important. Why did you choose using email as your medium?
I think that everyone has email. And I think that especially the people I most want to reach, the ones who are sort of most scared, you can get an email that's a totally anonymous, total burner, and just email and get your response and still have a record of the whole conversation. Whereas with Slack, you're probably already techie if you're no Slack and stuff like that. I think it's important to, once you do this on every channel. So Skype, Slack, everywhere, but I think email is the one thing everybody has.
Time for one more question.
Are you familiar with companies in Canada like Blue Jay Legal?
I'm not.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Greg. I have no problem asking my son to get off of Minecraft, but to come here and ask Greg to shorten up and finish up with, that's tough to do. Greg did most of this on his own, and he was, again, head down from morning to night, and when he came in on Sunday morning, he said, I couldn't sleep last night. And I'm like, why wasn't I not surprised, Greg? So the next team, great group of guys, Team to Sign. I'll let you guys introduce a bit more about you, but yet another wonderful project they worked on.
Good? You good? Hi folks, we are To Sign. My name is Mark Asfar. I'm the articling student at Momentum Law.
I'm Gabby Bermudez. I work at IBM as a tech analyst and developer.
My name is Andre. I'm a third-year law student at U Ottawa. And as well, I also introduced, because I was supposed to go last, I was also introduced by our teammate who's not here, unfortunately, Ksenia, and she helped us with the wonderful design of our app.
My name is Amit. I'm a fourth-year computer science student at York, and I'm currently interning at IBM.
I'm also a third-year student, and I'm Ted. I currently co-op at IBM, and hope you enjoy this.
Everyone has a story about a handshake deal gone wrong. Apparently, that's particularly true for the community of Ottawa, if this 288 comment thread on Reddit shows anything. Whether it's a broken item, a wrong model, when things go wrong, it sucks. And very often, there's no recourse for you because you shook someone's hand, said some words, and there's no proof that it happened. Well, we want to solve this with TwoSign, an app that will create simple agreements for a variety of purposes using only your words. It's going to be easy to use, and it's going to come with extra features to bring peace of mind. And to show you how it works, I'm going to let Gabby take over for a bit here.
Hey everyone, really excited to show you how to use the product. Here we have a tutorial page. It's going to be really easy, but I just want to show you how the product works. So let's go skip ahead to the main part. And let's go ahead and sign in. Let's sign in with an account. We have a list here of all the different contract templates that we're going to have. I want to select bill of sale. I want to be a buyer in this case. Here, who is the buyer? We want to answer this with our voice, so go ahead. This audio that we just captured is going to be sent to text via Google Speech Recognition AI. So let's go ahead. All the other questions associated with the contract you can also answer with your voice. Here we have a choice to choose whether or not you wanted the product to be sold as is, or if there were any special warranties or protections. We can also answer this with our voice. At the very last step, we have the summary of everything with the contract. Everything we supplied into the application is already here. The buyer field, my name. If we scroll to the bottom, we can do final verification with 3 options: audio files, signatures, or photo IDs. We hope you enjoyed that demo of the product.
So you're looking at it and you're wondering, okay, if it's so simple, why hasn't it been done before? Well, the answer is, it was tried by a group called Shake in 2013, sponsored and funded by BuzzFeed and Spotify, bought out by Legal Shield in 2015. Some key differences were they didn't have the ease of audio use that we bring. Their contracts were clunky and very limited, and they never expanded upon the product. It basically isn't in use at this point. Now that's unfortunate because there is a market for this that is very large. 85% of Canadians are engaging in the second-hand market every year. And they're spending quite a bit. Ottawa actually ranks second in Canada for cities by per capita spending on Kijiji. That's an average of $477 per person every year being spent in this marketplace. And most of those people are going without contracts. Now, we know that they want the service that we're offering, and we know that because we conducted a survey of over 50 people this weekend, and we asked them about our product, and they told us some key things. 50% of them said they had never made an agreement in these sorts of transactions. Of those people, 90% said that they were interested in trying out an app like this, and 40% said that they would absolutely use it. We also asked them about the features they'd like to see in this app, and they told us that they wanted it to be free to start, they want it to be simple to use, and they want it to be suitable for different uses, all of which are features we've included in our prototype. Now, how are we going to make some money off of this? How are we going to create a system that is able to keep functioning? Well, we're offering tiered systems of revenue. It's going to be free to start with for the average users. We want to get them in the door and using something basic like our bill of sale. Then we're going to offer them a small fee that they can pay to have it permanently stored on the cloud with our service at TwoSign, giving them peace of mind. And for small businesses and entrepreneurs who are going to be using this a lot, a regular subscription service so that they can know all their files are taken care of. We're also going to offer the additional service of certified agreements that they can order if you ever have a legal dispute. So if you're going to court and you're fighting over a breached contract, we can provide a version of it that will be recognized as evidence. Now, how do we get our first 100 users in the door? We're going to launch on all the major platforms. We're going to provide useful apps right out the door, the contracts that people need, and we're going to continue to support those contracts by adding additional options, photography, catering agreements, things like that. And we're going to try to partner strategically and target groups on Kijiji and Facebook. This is TwoSign. Chase that deal, we'll do the rest.
Open the floor up for questions for these guys. What a great presentation.
That was really great. If there are, let's say we're on Kijiji and I see a posting, how would it work with the buyer and the seller in a Kijiji posting? Would we both be verbally doing the contract, or one of us for the other? How do you see that happening? And is Kijiji your like #1 target?
We like the idea of starting on Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace because that's what a lot of people are using, particularly students, parents, small business owners who are using these services and are buying things that are important to them, where they want that safety of mind, but they're not sophisticated enough to get lawyers. And the initial version of the app is going to have one person pulling out a phone, handing it to the next party when they've answered their questions, and it'll create an agreement that can be emailed to both of them or sealed onto the cloud. Down the road, we would like to open it up so that you can send someone an agreement online. And I mean, long term, we would even love to be able to tie in transactions into this so that you can send an e-transfer and have that logged with the agreement and proven that the consideration was given. But 48 hours, right now, we're just starting with something that's basic, pulling out your phone. Yeah.
Very, very well done, thank you. I think I have the answer from Peter's question. It seemed to be focused on the actual seller, but it's both ways, right? So you would actually have an app that would be there for a buyer and a seller.
That's the beauty of it.
So you can enter this either way, but at the end of the day, you both use the same tools. You just be on the opposite side of it.
Exactly. And so if you're uncomfortable on either side of the deal, you can pull this out and say, hey, I just want to make sure we're clear on the terms.
Thank you. Very good.
You said that you talked to about 50 people over the course of the weekend. Did you get any feedback that made you change your approach to your product?
Yeah, price point was a big one for us. We asked people, are you willing to pay for this? And we got a range of data. Actually, I think something like 30% of the survey results we got said it depends on the complication of the agreement and how important it is. So that's why our numbers aren't fixed. We're not attached to those, but we do think that it would make sense to have the fees reflect the agreement. So the bill of sale we want to keep simple and easy to access, but for example, a lease agreement, which would be much more complicated and is probably involving more sophisticated individuals, we'd put a higher fee attached to keeping that on the cloud and to securing it for them.
How do you plan to promote this? I mean, there's targeting what the channels are, but how do you plan to drive it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of organic marketplaces that are like this now. I mean, Facebook Marketplace is huge among the student and parent crowd. So that's why we want to target those, yes, with targeted ads, also with word of mouth, and by providing a feature that's simple right out of the box. So that bill of sale, the basic service agreements, a snow removal agreement in Ottawa, for example, that anyone can use in their neighborhood. Things like that we think will get it started. And then partnering and trying to get these groups to realize we're using it. So telling Kijiji, a lot of your users like this product. Maybe you want to actually help us spread the use if it makes them more comfortable using your service as well.
So other than the information that the users will input, what's your source? How are you developing the background agreements?
We're going to have legal people on our team. I mean, it is a legal hackathon, so the plan is that there will be some legal people on board who are developing these agreements, finding good precedent, discovering key terms. So we used some precedents we found for this, but you'd have a team ongoing and developing, just like you have ongoing customer support and marketing.
Very well done. I think you're going to do a big shake to that company in the United States. You spoke to 50 people. Did you speak to a lawyer?
This product was developed in part, or inspired in part, by talking to lawyers. I work at Momentum Law, and this is something we talked about as an idea that we've always wanted. And I've done legal research on verbal contracts and the challenges with them. And I did talk to a couple lawyers this weekend and hear some of their basic feedback.
And where will you get the data for all of those contracts?
Bit by bit, there's databases online, there's precedents online, working with law firms and lawyers, and having lawyers in-house, we're able to develop this. Precedents are this weird thing in the legal field, like they're both intellectual property and they kind of freely circulate, and so it's an organic process of developing those.
And that was my question. Did you talk to a lawyer? Hopefully not, was going to be my answer. But, not yet, soon. I think the idea of templates is a great idea. The idea of, even this, my parents, signed snow plowing agreements. So having some simple agreements that students, older people that may not think about an agreement but would do it if it's easy would be really good. and giving those away for free would be even better for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like to add, people are doing lots of tweets, which is fantastic. Over the back, we have Carlo, who's recording this and broadcasting it live. When you tweet using the hashtag GLH Ottawa or hashtag GLH 2018, it actually is going to appear into the feed of the broadcast as it's going along. So you're going to really love watching this when you get home. But everybody else that we've put this out to over the course of the past day is enjoying it right now.
So 10 years ago, or maybe 20, a hackathon would have meant a wall of empty Coke cans, cigarette ashes overflowing the ashtray in a very dark, dark room. We've progressed. A beautiful facility, a bunch of pizza and a lot of coffee, so it'll only get better, I'm sure. No smoking at all. This next group, again, we watched organically grow out of nowhere on Friday. I'll let them introduce themselves, but very impressive how I got here. They clearly worked quite hard, I'm sure, during the week. I got here at 8:30 or 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. They were already fully teamed up. Our sleeves were rolled up, heads were down, and weren't even willing to acknowledge me as I came to offer them the complimentary morning muffins. So I'll let you guys take it from here.
So my name is Mira. I'm a second-year French common law student at the University of Ottawa.
Hi, Noel Corbo. I'm counsel with the Department of Justice, but here on my own personal account.
I'm Abraham Adib. I'm a statistician. I work with ISED, Innovation, Science, Economic Development Canada.
I'm Lalonde, and I'm in the second year in law school for the joint program, BComp GD.
So the future of law is going to be about bringing together legal experts and data science. And today we're going to show you the art of the possible. 2 data scientists, 2 legal students, 1 lawyer, getting together to build in 24 hours an application that can assess and visualize the strength of legal obligations in international treaties. Building on semantic and sentiment analysis, we built an algorithm that can group words together, such as shall, may, must together to predict the legal bindingness of clauses in legal contracts.
So it's important to determine whether treaties are merely signs of goodwill or are they actually serious legal commitments that can result in sanctions. So in our case, we looked specifically at international treaties, and we saw that they varied strongly in the language which they employ, so whether it's mandatory or it's discretionary language. So while lawyers can easily classify legal obligations by just traditionally doing a read through the treaties clauses, this approach is not really scalable. So we're looking to provide a solution to, first of all, help the public, the private sector organization in understanding the law. Second, we're looking to assist lawyers to streamline their research, to leverage their higher value activities. Third of all, we're looking to influence future law drafting. And finally, also to assist and help international trade organizations. So what we did in developing the solution, we consulted, first of all, with the Department of Justice Legislative Council. We also talked with academics and researchers at the University of Ottawa, and we talked to other government officials.
So let's dive in.
So I get to show you guys around the app. So as yesterday when I started building the app, I started doing some exploratory data analysis. And plotted first every single article. So this is all parsed from treaty to article, and I scored every article based on our SOI, which is our Strength of Obligation Index. This was used, I used a method used in credit rating to apply it onto this. And what you see here on the vertical axis is the actual score for that specific treaty. And you see kind of a uniform distribution, but then you'll also notice outliers that jump out. There's one specific one, which would be Ukraine, that stands out as one of the most heavy language used within, or the strongest language used in the analysis. And if you look at the top here, I created a time series analysis. And what the parameter control gives you is whether you're looking at sums, averages, or medians. And if you look at the sum, you see an increase, an obvious linear trend there. And if you switch up to the average, you'll notice a downward slope. And the idea that gave me was, hey, we're actually writing more articles now, but the average strength of that article has actually been going down. That means trade has been going up, and the actual hardness of the language used in the trade agreements has gone down. I'm not a lawyer, but that's the conclusion that I've come up with by just looking at the data right here. There's other dashboards, so there's another dashboard right there that I've used. This will all be available to you at the end of the slide. I created a web app. This is mobile friendly and web friendly. Anybody in here and out there can use it. Can we switch over to my last step? So in scaling the solution up, I see it as a two-pronged approach, refining the actual scoring system and the data used. In the scoring system itself, I imagine, well, like the theme of this hackathon here, we want to use multidisciplinary different sectors to actually enhance on this. So the machine learning would be us students, would be researchers, would be the data scientists. The implementation of more sophisticated text analytics will require domain experts, such as yourselves, lawyers, judges, and the government of Canada. And in the database, the data warehousing, especially as data volume increases, we want to get that pipeline going, so speed, the actual details, and then the data scraping, hopefully setting up an API where people can use the data. And yes, thank you. Any questions?
Could you speak a little bit as to how you're gonna get users to pay for the services?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So what we did here isn't so much the sell. This is, we firmly believe, aligned with things that you hear with open government and how to leverage data. We're all passionate about this. You'll see there's a new wave of legal coming out that want to use data in their operations. And the large driver that we had here is to show what's possible. So there's value in this. This is an application that is transferable. Like, we can actually use basically the ranking algorithms that we use to apply to various different areas of law. So this is, it's a gold mine. It's a new way of looking at things. And we don't really have a business model. It's a public good. This is open, like my colleague was saying here. So.
This is more of a consulting type of product. We are here as data scientists and lawyers and students to consult on your behalf. As you don't have the computing skills, you don't have the data science skills. The actual methodology used in the text analytics can be used across any documents. It can be refined over time. It can be really domain specific. The actual tools themselves, that link right here will take you to the app, which is open source. All the data is open source. Anybody can use it. But if a law firm wants to set up an application like this, we can adjust for privacy's work within your network. Use whatever tools. This is a dashboard. Some people need reporting tools, weekly reports, monthly reports. These are the products we provide them. It's pre-built.
You looked at articles and you looked at treaties, so you looked at some kind of classification of information. And how did you decide what to pick you would look at when you're doing your strength analysis?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What was the reasoning behind what you looked at to do the strength analysis?
Well, we actually had
beyond the treaties themselves.
So we used the language, first of all, so keywords like shall, must, and will, and we did associations with secondary, tertiary, and 4 levels out, and that analysis to see how strong specific groupings of words are, and we used domain experts to help us strengthen it. What I would do moving forward is create a validation, scrape actual cases, count out how many times these articles are mentioned in as many cases as I possibly can, and tune the actual scoring parameters based on those values as a cross-validation type.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, so we need to look at this further. We need to look at the words like shall, which is the mandatory, and may, which is the discretionary.
But we're just looking at the trade agreements themselves.
So we, as you can see here,
Just in the end, the agreements.
metadata, that's been provided by Professor Alchner at the University of Ottawa. And so they scraped all the trade agreements, and they're by subject. There's competition, there's dispute resolutions. So this weekend, we just worked on the competition section, and looking through all the articles, we extracted all the shalls and all the words that came with shall to see what strength it gives. And so it could say shall do this, but the next one could be shall that weakens the shall. So we gave that a scoring in order to be able to come up with those index there.
We have trade agreements from 1960 up until the latest ones. We used as many as we had access to.
I just want to explore a little more what you see as the target audience. I know there were a few comments made about international trade organizations and so on, but can you expand on that? Who's your target audience?
My target audience so I want to create tools for researchers to be able to use it as an open source tool. I want to help out professors. I want to create tools like this for the government to make policy decisions, to actually understand when they write new trade agreements, how strong they are. They could look at past data and see that, and be able to tell, oh, maybe we're too loose on these trade agreements here. But I also want to sell the product to lawyers and law firms. I want to tell you that this is just one case of using sentiment analysis and text analysis. You can do this on any documents, whether it's contracts, whether it's patent law. It's fully customizable.
I'm really impressed by your presentation and the research, but I'm wondering if treaty is the best way to start market your product. Would you have considered other types of?
Yes, of course. We look at, for me, my idea was patent law, and try to see how it's worded and whether that actually leads to any kind of cases, whether patent trolls target specifically worded patents or so on and so forth. This was the data I showed up on Friday. This was the data that was given, so we began working with it and we got the creative.
So because you had the data, that was something easier for you to test. But what I like is that this application can be used in lots of other.
I've used this across social media platforms and other documents, the same kind of strategy.
So if you're under a lot of pressure to get your first 100 clients, how would you go about getting them? Because I think getting something off the ground like this would really require the power of
come speak to me and I can show them the insight that we gained off 24 hours worth of working on this. Being a non-lawyer and what I can tell you about trade law now would probably blow your mind. As I actually was explaining to different people what I've learned last night off of using my tool, it's phenomenal.
Maybe it could be useful in the context of the NAFTA agreement and negotiations, right?
Thank you very much. Wonderful. We talked about some of the major sponsors of the event and how generous IBM was in helping us get this space with Invest Ottawa. There's also a lot of other sponsors that were behind the scene and stuff over the last couple of weeks. And Fasken, as a matter of fact, when was that? Thursday, I think Fasken stepped up. And Momentum Law, very supportive all the way through this, and very generous in bringing forward some grand prizes that will be available today. And so again, we couldn't have done it. No, Carleton County, CCLA, County of Carleton Legal Association, another acronym I'm learning. But you know, all the way through, and this is our first year. We're very excited to see how next year goes. But these guys are going to beat me up if I keep talking. So I have 5 minutes. How many minutes left? So this next group, again, we'll start and we'll let you guys introduce yourself, and then you'll be on the phone.
I am Dorota Terleski. I'm a lawyer, specifically in estates and real estate.
I'm Joseph Zach. I am the founder of Realizing Blockchain. It's a blockchain education group in Ottawa, helping newcomers to technology.
My name is Jevin Malte. I have an AI consultancy here in town and also have a
a legal tech product called Willowbee to help people make wills for free.
My name is Shirley Maryse. I'm a lawyer with the Department of Justice Evidence Management Team.
My name is Polly. I am a second-year law student at U Ottawa.
Christian Sad. I'm a lawyer and the co-director of the French Law Practice Program at the University of Ottawa.
My name is Kirsten Anderson. I'm in Information Systems.
Should also just say there's one more person, Brenda, who is the legal librarian for the will registry here in Ontario.
Or the CCLA, the County of Carleton Law Association. I will try to use acronyms as much as possible because they take less time. And we are on the clock. Okay. So how many people here have been or know of someone who has been involved in a very heated estate battle over someone's assets? Someone dies? Okay. So I would say about 60% of people here. So we have a problem in Ontario and Canada-wide. First of all, over half of the population does not have a will. In addition to that, we have a problem with finding wills. Estate litigation is on the rise, and those court cases are related, at least in part, to the location of the last wishes of the deceased. The will is the way that we, the living, get to know the wishes of the deceased. This is why this is important. Okay, so how do we, sorry, just a second. We're good. Okay. So we don't have a standard approach to storing wills in Ontario. We do not have a centralized system where we go. So after a client dies, we don't have one place to go. As a result, we have this litigation. And this is just a quote from a law librarian who gets calls from the public. So we get countless calls from the public looking for the wills of family members. And this causes unnecessary stress, confusion, and in many cases, extensive court fees for clients. So what do we do currently? Well, if you're an individual, like an executor who's been appointed in a will, you're going to go maybe to the lawyer's office. Well, what if that lawyer has moved? What if that lawyer has sold their practice over to another lawyer? We can also go to the County of Carleton Law Association. No, I need the other slide, please. Yeah. No, this one, thank you. Okay, so you can also go to the Law Society, and you can look for the will there. And as a clerk in a law firm, what you can do is you can look through all of the obituaries in all of the different newspapers or anything that's been published or released, like the Ontario reports, and look for any of the deceased information. Again, this is not centralized, it takes a really long time. Okay, so as a lawyer, we are facing a baby boomer generation dying off. Okay, so you can see in this graph that this here is the growing proportion of the population that is getting older and older, i.e. closer to death. We also have 44%, what this shows is 44% of the lawyers are going to be retiring in the next 15 years. Okay, what this does is it creates a problem with privacy, confidentiality, transfer of information to the next set of lawyers. What we have created is a system for lawyers in order to store wills. Okay, so these will be through blockchain technology. This will be storage for wills that will be encrypted. It will be tamper-proof, so you can authenticate and you can ensure that it's the original, and they will be time-stamped. This all ensures privacy, confidentiality, immediate access, so no more driving to Sarnia, Ontario to see if there is a will in a lawyer's vault. So now I'm just going to have my colleague show you what this product will look like.
So this is live on the web right now. You can go ahead and log in and play with it. But here we're a logged in lawyer, and you want to go and update your client's will information. So you can go and upload the will, and you'll see right away that there's a new versioning that's there, and so that's locked down in the blockchain, as well as a will fingerprint that's associated with this actual file. So when you go and retrieve the will later, you can run it again to be sure that it's actually the same one. Here we can be the society, and we're looking to see if there's this Gemma Malte guy who's deceased is actually in the registry, so we can go ahead and retrieve as well. And again, it's online. I'm happy to show you later if you want.
Try it out. Okay, so who are we going to approach with our product? Well, we will approach first the lawyers who are the millennials or the people who will be executors. So we will be approaching the lawyers who will eventually have standard practices. Are you trying to get my attention? Okay.
We're going to move into the ground.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, okay.
You should go to market plan.
Thank you so much. Okay, our market plan is we're going to financial advisors, lawyers, and what we're hoping is that the lawyers will have standard practices, which will be enabled by the blockchain technology, which they will then expect from the lawyers who are retiring when they are thinking about purchasing or adopting other lawyers' practices. So now our competitors, would you like to know about the competitors? Okay, so does that kind of answer your question? Okay, happy to talk afterwards as well.
What were you thinking in terms of pricing and how much they will pay for your services?
Right, so right now it costs about, lawyers charge about $100 annually to store a will. So we at least want to cut that cost in half. Yeah.
Can I ask a question to some of the other members of the team?
Yes, sorry.
So I wanted to know who, did you talk to people over the weekend? What feedback did you get to develop and change your business model?
So when we were standing up to share ideas, Dorota said she has this problem all the time of finding wills. And with Willoughby, I get emails all the time of people saying, where should I be storing this? I didn't know I couldn't put it in a safety deposit box. I didn't know that I can't have it at home, or I should do it at home. And that there's issues with lawyers, as well as the legal librarian was here. So between the three of us, we've got a lot of insight into the individuals and the lawyers. And so between the three of us, we felt that we had pretty well locked down that this is indeed a real problem that people have.
We also did a lot of research to see how many litigations there are related to lost or missing wills, and there are quite a lot of them. And we're also looking into how many times that the public guardian and trustee has to deal with people who, I guess, their wills are missing, so they have to deal with intestacy and so on. So.
Would it help if it was required that a will be registered, like titles are registered?
Yes, we're hoping eventually this will lead to a will registration act, like the Land Registration Act with Terranet.
One of the bigger issues when somebody dies is who's the executor. So you mentioned the executor could find the will, but often the executor doesn't know they're the executor. Somebody dies and it's a bit of a question as to who's doing what.
That could also be part of the registration as well.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
You know, in order to acquire your first couple of users, have you thought about who you would start with?
Sorry, who would we?
The first customer that we were going to approach is clearly defined, and that would be a rather young lawyer, because they would be more open to the technology of storing their files on the cloud-based service in an encrypted manner, right? They would be more open to that and willing. We would just look for a lawyer like that, practicing will and estate law in the Ottawa area. start there and then expand to the greater market. So.
Just a thought for you guys, but private banking everywhere has a lot of, they're often designated as executors.
We weren't sure if to mention that right now or not.
Also, perhaps partnering with insurance companies like LawPro, they could make it a requirement for the lawyers to use that system of storage once they create a will for someone. That would be good as well.
Obviously, you're expecting people to say, yes, I will. But in your marketing plan, have you thought of considering the Law Society of Canada, for example? I was surprised that you didn't indicate that in your plan.
Yes, thank you. So, yes, the Law Society is aware of the problem. It's just that the caliber of the product that has been presented to Law Society so far has just not, I guess, passed.
A major challenge is that who's feeling the pain point the strongest right now. And the reality is some of the pressure might have to just be generated by the lawyers themselves, saying that we really want to have this mandated and it's something that's sanctioned for all lawyers, versus going straight to the society and then trying to push it down onto the lawyers. It may not be the ideal approach. So certainly if the society's ready, yeah, I'll pay you $1 million for this today, yeah, we're open to that, but likely it'll be the lawyers that will apply the pressure.
A lot of jurisdictions outside of Ontario allow holographic wills, and even a bigger issue as to where is that will and where it might be. So have you thought about that as an opportunity in parallel with maybe starting in Ontario?
Yeah, so our system is actually completely modular. We wish we had more time to present our actual product because it really is beautiful and it's quite extensively developed, including our interface, the website. Our database, sort of, because that's what it is, a very secure ledger, is able to store almost any type of information that you give it, any type of data within the system. And also the modularity allows us to adapt it to different jurisdictions.
And that was our, we're already at 6 minutes of questions for that team, so. It was a pressing question?
If you don't mind, I was just thinking about safety, because you say it's very secured once you have it, but the weak point is the entry of data. So what kind of security feature do you have at that stage?
Entry in what way? Sorry?
Getting the data in your system. You know, once it's in there, it's going to be protected, but how do you make sure that what gets put in it is accurate?
Okay. So first of all, only lawyers and notaries get access to input data into our system. So it's very, very clean. It depends on the specific situation. So either we might approach the office itself, or we may allow some kind of an encrypted transfer of data. And like you said, once it's inside our database, it's extremely secure, it's encrypted, and the only people that can access the data at that point are either the people that store a key, or people that store a multi-signature key. So two different bodies will dictate the access to a specific data or any other world scenario that may exist.
That's great, thanks.
Thank you, Will Bench. All right, judges, thank you. Those were some fantastic questions for the teams, and teams, amazing. Like I said at the beginning, it's what you managed to accomplish from meeting each other 48 hours ago to presenting this right now is nothing short of astonishing. So before we invite the judges to retire to tabulate their scoring, we'd like to share with them, we'd like them to be present for a couple important parts. One is the recognition of some of the folks who were critical in making this possible. Spent so much time talking to them, I don't know why I need to look at my writing of it down, but just to make sure I don't miss any names. So you've met Warren and I. Warren made reference to Caroline Croft in the back, critical team member here from Invest Ottawa. Christiane Sad, who was just on the Will Reg team, has also been phenomenal at putting this together. She has been, at this event, a massive recruiter of participation, of talent, of sponsors. She presented on the legal ethics of AI yesterday. She began coaching and she joined the team. So outstanding contribution all around. Not present in the room today, but a huge part of its success. A gentleman from Department of Justice, SAFE Alum in a year. When we announced that we were going to do this hackathon, I got an email from SAFE saying, I'd like to talk to you. I said, sure. About what? He said, I want to hack your hackathon. I said, what does that mean? He said, innovation and justice is very important. SAFE works on the analytics side. And he works with some very talented people, some of whom you've met already tonight. And he works with talented people trying to do important things and trying to move the needle in government. And he worked tirelessly to make this event important within the Federal Department of Justice. And I think he's been quite successful. The groups that had the 3 largest turnouts among attendees in